We have a shocking Rockets trade proposal, and I'll tell you right now, this is pure robbery for the Houston Rockets as they would acquire a pair of experienced NBA champions and create the next NBA super team right here in H-Town. Welcome into Rockets Digest. I'm Jace Andrews, and I appreciate you joining us. We're getting a lot of love and support, so hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep pushing out more and more videos. Now, this trade proposal comes from Bill Simmons, which is funny because he's been a big Celtics homer guy. He talks about them a lot, and yet he was the one who suggested this. And it comes from Bill Simmons' podcast saying the Celtics would receive Fred Vanvleet, Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, and this year's number 10 overall pick. And the Rockets would receive Jalen Brown and Jrue Holliday. And I'll start off by saying this. I love Jalen Brown. I think he is so underrated. And I'm not saying he's been taken down by having Jason Tatum on his team. I think more or less Jalen Brown has just not gotten to show his true potential. Now, Jrue Holliday is primarily one of the top defensive names in the NBA and would love to have his fight and tenacity on this Rocket squad. Now, I do want to give more context and talk about what Bill Simmons entirely said on his podcast, saying, quote, if you are Houston and you can get Jaylen and Jrue in the same trade and give up assets, but not touch Thompson and not touch Şengün, and keep enough going, oh boy, that team would become the team to beat in the NBA. And this is where I want to go a little bit more in depth on Jaylen and Jrue and why I love this trade so much. Let's first talk about the guy of the hour, Jalen Brown. He's only 28 years old. He has so much experience in the NBA, and this year he averaged about 22.2 points. In terms of his career, he's averaging closer to 25. He has good rebound numbers, he has good assist numbers, and he fights for his team. If you watched the NBA playoffs after the Rockets were eliminated and saw after Jason Tatum got injured, the fight that Jalen Brown showed, that is something that I would want on my team. Not to mention, Ime Udoka and Jalen Brown have history from when Ime coached Jalen on the Celtics in the year that they made the finals against the Warriors, but just couldn't bring home the ship. The fun thing about this all, and the thing that really makes me more interested, is they add in Jrue Holliday. Jrue is a absolute defensive guy. Yes, he's at the little bit of an older end. He'll be 35 in just a couple of days, and will probably only be playing in the NBA for, I would say, 3 to 4 more years. But he has NBA championship level experience, not just with the Celtics, but also when he played with the Milwaukee Bucks. And I truly believe that this guy is perfectly example of what Ime Udoka wants in a defensive player and would teach Amen Thompson kind of the role of that defensive mind. In some ways, I compare Amen to Jrue Holliday in a lot of facts. There is some notes that I do want to talk about. Jalen Brown did come out and say that he was playing with a partially torn meniscus in this year's last month of the regular season and the playoffs, so that is something to monitor. He could have surgery upcoming in the next coming weeks. There is obviously a lot that could ride on that. Meniscuses are not hard to come back from, and in a lot of ways, he could be playing by October, maybe even fully back to what I see Jalen Brown as by early November, mid-November. It's not that big of an injury, but it is something to monitor because surgery is a real possibility. It just hasn't been confirmed whether or not it's necessary or not. Now with Jrue, I think the big thing with him is he is an expensive player. He is $30 million. And yes, his defensive ranks are absolutely great. He is usually in the top 10 of voting in Defensive Player of the Year. You talk about 2021, 2022, and 2023 being 8th, and 7th in the Defensive Player of the Year. He also finished 7th back in 2018. He is a very good defensive player, although being maybe not the biggest guy in terms of defense in height-wise. I mean, 6'3" for an NBA height is just kind of average in that aspect, but he is very tenacious with his defense, and if you watch the Celtics games, in fact, if you go back and watch the Milwaukee Bucks games, Jrue Holliday plays every single possession on defense like it's the NBA Finals and it's Game 7, which I love, and Ime Udoka has preached to this team that that's how he wants every game to be played. Hence why they won 52 games this year when they weren't supposed to do anywhere close to that. And adding these two players would be huge. Now, you talk about Jaylen Brown. You see, okay, well, he's had Tatum for his entire career. Why are we mentioning Tatum and thinking that Jaylen Brown can be the same as him? Because of the stats when Jason Tatum is not on the court with Jaylen Brown. And what's funny, and I want to put this stat up here because Jaylen Brown has played 39 games in his career without Jason Tatum. He's averaged 27.3 points, 7.1 rebounds, and 3.9 assists. A lot of those games, though, came before Jason Tatum was in the NBA. People forget Jaylen Brown was drafted a year before Tatum. And in that aspect, some of these games were when JB was just a rookie. When you talk about more recency stuff, Jaylen is not just an offensive threat, but he can be a league manager. He can be a Fred VanVleet type of leader at just 28 years old. And yes, it would be very hard to see Fred VanVleet go. I love him. I think he has been great for Houston. And if all things were to go properly, I would like to have him back. But if this trade slides across my desk and I'm Rafael Stone, you would have a hard time pulling me away from the pen to go sign this. This is a perfect trade. The only problems that come with it are money, and that's where we have to go to right now, because if we look at this trade and the Rockets acquiring Jaylen Brown and Jrue Holliday, now you can't see in this picture, but up top I do have the money going out with VanVleet, Smith, and Tari Eason. This still puts Houston over the first apron cap by $15 million because you're paying Jaylen $50 and you're paying Jrue $30 million. So for this to work, there's a couple of things that need to happen. Restructured contracts for a couple of players, maybe even some cuts and getting more draft picks so that you can bring in some younger guys / signing some free agents to some smaller contracts. But the big thing to me is these NBA super teams, and you talk about them. You go back to the 2017 Golden State Warrior squad, and yes, their starters was great, and they had some depth, but the depth wasn't as good as the starting five. You talk about teams like the Miami Heat, LeBron James. They had a lot of starters, but the depth, it was there for the first 2-3 players, but then it really didn't have much. That's the thing, and that's the way the NBA is played, and is played still today. When you construct these super teams, especially with this first apron and second apron cap, you have to make sure your starters are the top tier. And I just want you to sit back, relax, and look at this starting five for the Houston Rockets. Jaylen Brown, Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Jrue Holliday, and Alperen Şengün. Please tell me a better starting five in the NBA than what these five would be. Spoiler alert, there is not one. There is not a better starting five in the NBA today than what that five would be. Yes, you do lose out on some height, and we know that Ime Udoka has talked a lot about how he likes the double big lineup, and he wants to keep using that. Guess what? You don't have Tari Eason. You don't. You don't have Jabari Smith. You don't. But you can re-sign Steven Adams, and he would be really cheap, and he would love to play for you again. He's only 31 years old, 30 years old, whatever it is. I would love to make this trade, but there's money around it. There's stuff to work with it. But these three players, man, it would just be a fantastic addition with Jaylen and Jrue. You lose the 10th overall pick this year, and I'm going to put my opinion right out there because you probably recognize I'm not the ones making a lot of draft content. I don't think the Rockets should keep that number 10 pick. I don't think the talent is there. I don't think there is a guy there that I would want. Maybe if someone falls, I know there's a Duke prospect that everybody's looking at. If someone falls, I wouldn't mind it. But in my mind and the way that this team is going, there's two options. You make a big trade like this for Jaylen and Jrue, or Ja, or Trey, or Tyler Hero, or you want to go further, Giannis, KD. I have my reservations about those trades, but besides the point, I think you trade the number 10 pick, whether that's 4 players like this in this type of trade, or it's 4 more draft picks in the future. Because I'm going to be quite frank, this team is good as it is right now. I know that. However, you are young, and you have a time right now where you can go and make this team a super team. You have the assets. You have the picks. Why not go out and risk it? You didn't think you were going to be here. Go do something about it. Go prove that this organization is here to stay. You keep all your 3 young core. So in that aspect, 4 or 5 years down the line, Jrue Holliday retires, JB's off your squad. You probably still have Şengün. You probably still have Thompson. You probably still have Jalen Green. Nothing really changes about the future. Yeah, you're going to lose Fred VanVleet. You're going to lose some picks. And I do love Jabari Smith. But at the same time, you make the move and you go win an NBA championship, no one cares. I want you to let me know how you feel about this trade, though, in the comments section, because obviously the opinion is out there for me. I love this. I think Jaylen Brown will be a perfect addition. I love Jrue Holliday. And the last point I'll make is JB coming back with Ime. It just creates a team to be reckoned with. And with how good this Western Conference is going to be next year, I hate to say it because I think this team is good enough to win. I want to say that right out. I think they are good enough to win. I think in many, many years, they are atop the Western Conference. They are 1, 2, 3 seeded next year and vying for an NBA championship. The Western Conference is loaded, and it looks like it may be even more loaded when Giannis gets moved. You have to move with your conference. And right now, there is a team in Boston that needs to get under a salary cap. And there are 2 players that they can trade and immediately be under it. They're not going to have Tatum next year. You give them a 10th pick. You basically give the Celtics a rebuild year in between Tatum's injury. And you get an absolute star in Jaylen Brown. And I love Jrue Holliday. I know he looked a little bit older and a little more sluggish out there in the playoffs, but I still think he is a force to be reckoned with, and I would just love to see these 2 in Rockets red. That's the final point I make. Hit that subscribe button. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers now because y'all have been absolutely killing it, and I gotta be quite frank. 2 weeks ago, if you'd have told me that we were on our way to 2,000 subscribers, I would have told you were absolutely insane, and yet, here we are. So, cannot thank you enough. I appreciate the support. I know Donovan says the same thing, and if you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you as well. Hey, I appreciate everybody watching, and we will take a break and come back in our next episode of Rockets Digest.